Well, look at these two teams we're talking about here. Even though the transition was in effect, come around 2000, 2001, and what have you, it was still a different game compared to what is being played today. We know what they would do to Steph Curry in today's generation. They would look at Steph Curry. They would look at Kevin Durant back in 2000. And please don't get me wrong, Max. They would be all-star caliber players. But do you know the kind of physical abuse they would have had to absorb? They would have looked at Kevin Durant in that skinny frame. Because remember, there was still an Iceman George Gervin, so we know he still would have got his. But they would have looked at him. They would have looked at a Steph Curry. And you know what they would have done? They'd have beat him up. They'd have ran him through picks. They'd have made sure they felt elbows all the time, all of those different things. So I think in that era, because of the marksmanship of Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, Max, I can't summarily dismiss that. I know there's no way in hell those Lakers would have beaten these Golden State Warriors in today's game. No way in hell. Absolutely not. But back then, I would say, ooh, it's up for grabs. And if it were the 90s, I would definitely go with the Lakers team instead of this Golden State Warriors team because they simply wouldn't be physically tough enough to deal with the style of play that took place in the 80s and 90s, and to a lesser degree, 2000. So I don't think anybody's wrong here. They just need to answer the question more directly, Max, as to what era are we talking about? Is it now or is it then?
Max,
Yep.
whose side are you on?
Well, I see this the opposite of Stephen A., though largely the same. Ready for this? Stephen A. says neither. I say both. There is truth in what both are speaking.
Right.
And I disagree with you, Stephen. I know what you mean by the error would affect the style of play and therefore affect the score of the game, but I don't know if it actually affects the winner.
I'm talking about the players.
Yeah,
I understand. The player.
I believe in any era that they played, if you simply pluck these teams out and put them down on a court, the Warriors would beat those Lakers. Because the reason the game is played the way it is today is not just rules changes. It's that through analytics and through experience, people realized, and through common sense, I mean, by the way, Rick Pitino was the first guy to do this with the Knicks, with the bomb squad. If you shoot a lot of threes, you're counting by three instead of one or two. You know, it's better. Don't take long twos. They really didn't know that and play that way back then. So this Warriors style, I believe, would translate successfully, even if with more bumps and bruises in any era. But I don't think that's how you can really do it. If you pluck that Lakers team out of 2000, 2001 and drop them today in the preseason, any GM would look and say, we need a few more shooters. Or Kobe Bryant, had he been coming up today, would be a far better three-point shooter because he'd have to take a lot more of them. So it's not exactly – so therefore, when I look at what Shaq says, I understand what he means, the gist of it. What Shaq is saying is, look, yeah, they got more all-stars than we had, but we had the number one and number two player in their primes, in the game, at the same time. That's not Steph and KD. Kobe and Shaq are higher in their era. You want to throw Tim Duncan in there, say two of the three best, fine. But I could throw a whole bunch of guys in the mix with Steph and KD.
Well,
and so Shaq is saying the way we dominated in our time in that one season, the Warriors have not yet done. And I understand his point.
Well, listen, I understand his point, but at the same time, he was a liability at the free throw line, obviously. So not only are you talking about a 2-point scorer, you're talking about a 1-point scorer some of the time because you just hack a Shaq, foul him, send him to the free throw line, and bank on him missing one of the two free throws. So if you wanted to make an argument on behalf of the Golden State Warriors because of that particular reality, I get that. I guess what I'm thinking of errors, and here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a style of play from the standpoint, Max, you were allowed to hurt guys. You were allowed to run them through picks and screens and whatever. And we see how fragile Steph Curry is at times. He's gotten stronger. He's gotten better, but still relatively fragile. I'm amazed at the absence of injuries Kevin Durant has incurred in his career. I expected him to be more injury prone than he's ever been. So I give him a lot of credit for that as well. But let's take, for example, Max, let's just say this. You look at the era, right? Let's say Jordan. You know why I say with the Jordan? Jordan would have defended one of them. Pippen would have defended somebody. And Dennis Rodman would have defended Draymond Green. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when we look at it from a personnel perspective, there's no question that I would have picked those guys over the Golden State
Bulls,
Warriors.
I agree.
But errors do matter.
But let me say this.
Errors do matter.
Let me say this in terms of matchups. How would you exploit Golden State? A big body in the low post, maybe. in the history of the game, who would you choose over Shaq there? That's a problem for Golden State, as is Shaq in the paint, because no matter how much the game has changed, you still need to get to the paint. It's not post-ups anymore, it's dribble penetration. But you still need to get to the paint, or else you really are just a jump shooting team. Let me also give Mark Jackson credit, Stephen A. The reason I believe you're wrong about Steph, he may have gotten his lumps and stuff, but he'd be an MVP caliber, more or less, player
Steph
in any era.
Yeah.
Is because Mark Jackson and Steph Curry, Steph Curry had the imagination to say, I don't care, you're not supposed to shoot from way back there. I can do that. And Mark Jackson said, yes, you can. I'm your coach, and I'm telling you, you can do that. I believe that you can do that. And that changed the game. It's not just that he shoots threes, it's that he shoots, 100-footer threes
from the parking lot,
that give them extra space. From the park. He could do that in any era. Who's going to stop him from doing that?
But listen, I'm certainly not trying to take credit away from Mark Jackson because he had a lot to do. When we talk about Jerry West, when we talk about Bob Myers, when we talk about owner Joe Lacob, these are guys I love. Let's not forget the fact that Mark Jackson was there and helped build that foundation and deserves a lot of credit. And even Steve Kerr recognized that, even though he made some modifications, particularly on the offensive side of the floor with Iguodala. But nevertheless, what it comes down to is this. Anybody saw that coming from Steph Curry coming straight out of Davidson? D'Antoni with the New York Knicks. Do you think he wasn't going to let Steph pull up from the parking lot?
No
of course
doubt.
he was. Of course he was. It's just that the Golden State Warriors had a pick before the Knicks, which is what makes me sick to my stomach to this day.
I wouldn't say anyone would. It would take a certain kind of coach. It takes a special player.
Well, there was a few guys that would have.
Look, once upon a time, you were not supposed to swing for the fences. Babe Ruth said, to hell with that. That's why he was Babe Ruth. Steph Curry said, I don't care what they've done till now. I'm going to shoot from the parking lot. I can make that shot. And it would take a special coach to say, that's fine. You take
Max,
that shot as much as you want.
If you see the brother making shots from the parking lot, it ain't hard to change your mind.
All right. At the end of the day, though, we all agree, different game, different era.